Greetings. Well, it's time to do this. This is going to be my third Black Boomer rant. Now, I say it that way because it turns out I had actually done 6 rants before I had a number 1, number 2, and now this number 3. So, obviously I have my times when I'm irked about some of the things that are going on here and there, or, you know, I can't say TV anymore since I'm not watching TV, but there's just stuff that is irking me, and I decided it's time for me to say some stuff. I'm going to put timestamps down below if you want to kind of jump around. Then, you know, maybe you'll be, interested in something. Maybe you'll hear something that you don't like and you want to fuss about it, but you won't know if you don't go far enough. So here we are. So with that in mind, let's look at these. I'm going to start with this one because this is one that's irking me the most right now. You know what? Almost all white people need to stop saying woke. Yes, I said that. You know what? Black people started the word. 1930 of all things. So black people started it. You know, they were talking about being aware to other black people of racial discrimination, racial prejudice. And it was a lot of people who were getting into construction who were getting paid way less because they were black. Even now, there's a lot of farmers who are out there trying to get black people to work for them, and they only want to pay them like $8 or $10 an hour. That's terrible. But the idea was there were, black activists at the time, there's still a bunch now, who are telling folks, hey, don't do that. There's other stuff going on. You can't live off of that. They don't want you on their property, except during that time when you're working. They're not feeding you anything. And, just don't bother with it. Yeah, I know everyone needs money, but that's just how that is. However, I'm getting tired of hearing these politicians. The Orange Menace, yeah, I'm going to keep calling him different names throughout this thing. Him, people in the Senate, people in the House, a few people who are state politicians all across this country, white people, are using that as a pejorative term. We don't like that. I hate that. You got some nerve. If we start calling you what we want to call you, you're going to start saying, well, geez, we don't like that. Duh. No one wants to keep hearing that. And if you're going to keep on saying stuff like that, at a certain point, you know what? We're just going to keep making up our own thing, because that's what black people have done over all these years. For instance, other terms that white people have used as far as cultural appropriation. We used to talk about something that we really liked. Hey, that's the bomb. Something really good. That's the bomb. Y'all stole that. You used to have something called holla. Hey, holla. Whatever. Y'all took that. YOLO, which is you only live once. That was by black people. Now, I don't know about this new FAFO thing, but I can't say that one because I've never uttered a cuss word in my life. That one begins with 1, so I'm not going to do that. Twerking was started by black women, and now everybody's doing it. And everyone's wearing certain clothes, mainly women on this one, but even white guys, who are wearing certain clothes that they think gives them the right to look like they're acting black. And they don't really like black people, but, it's hard for some of them to say, hey, I like the music, and, we can always listen to the music and do whatever, and they want to dress so that they kind of look cool. But there you go. There's Bye Felicia. Bye Felicia. That's one I've never used. It wouldn't make any sense. But there are white people, and I know this because I see it on Instagram every once in a while. People are using that term. So, that's from the movie Straight Outta Compton, by the way. So that's where that came from. I'm betting most of the white people who are using that term have never seen Straight Outta Compton. I was actually shocked that I'd seen that one. But then again, I've seen some other movies, and I'm not going to bring it up. The whole thing is that if you don't care about minorities across the board, yes, a lot of this stuff is what black people have come up with. But you know what? The indigenous folks from this country, y'all are blasting them. There are people across this country who are trying to buy the land that the indigenous folks live on. They've been there for 200 or 300 years. and even longer. And the super rich saying, well, we can just buy that. You know, we'll let them live here, but they're going to have to start paying rent. I'm sorry. That really irks me a lot. If it doesn't irk you, you got a problem. Now let's look at this next thing. The DEI initiatives. Before I did a video back in December, they weren't talking about the DEI initiatives until just before the Orange whatever fuss pot. I'll go with that because I couldn't come up with something really quick. But he started talking about wanting to kill all this stuff because of these DEI initiatives. And you know what? He decided that he was going to say, well, we're going to go after all these universities because they've got all these DEI initiatives and they are being prejudiced against Jewish people. Here's the thing. His daughter married a Jewish man. He's got grandkids who are Jewish, but no one else. And he's talking about how Israel can pretty much do anything it wants to anybody else because all these countries and people in this country are against Jewish people. We're not against Jewish people. As a matter of fact, you know, I've got a lot of Jewish friends. I've never gone to, well, I'm not leaving the country, so we'll throw that out. But I have been to some weddings. I've known some Jewish people since I went to college. You know, a whole lot of Jewish people at that college at the time. And I still have some of those folks as friends. We're not against Jewish people. We're against certain things that we see happening. I'm talking to you, Long Island. Y'all know what you're doing. But in general, this DEI initiatives thing, I am so glad that Target is still getting crushed. I am glad that Walmart is getting crushed. I'm glad that any company who has decided, well, we're not going to have these DEI initiatives anymore. I can't remember the name of the city where George Floyd was killed, but you know what? Before the Orange Meanie decided that he was going to stop all these DEI initiative things, and he's trying to, you know, bully states into doing what he wants. Wherever it was that George Floyd was killed, and I can't remember, I'm thinking it was Milwaukee, but I'm totally not sure. I'm sorry about that, but I just don't remember. They decided they were going to kill their DEI initiatives because, you know, they knew the problems that they had started. And then as soon as they heard this thing, they ripped it all up. And a lot of major cities across this country decided to start ripping it all up. And certain companies, Facebook, for example, decided, well, yeah, I know we put all this stuff in there. We, you know, promoted the Black Lives Matter movement. We're killing that. Why? Because they were worried once he got elected that he was going to start targeting them. So they canceled all this stuff. A lot of other companies have canceled all this stuff. And you know what? It didn't help. Zuckerberg, dude, he doesn't like you anymore. You know, he didn't like when you, quote unquote, censored him back in 2021 by saying that the election was rigged, which, by the way, I think this past election was rigged. And there's some stuff out there, but, you know, until someone actually says that it really happened, I'm not going to worry about it. But, you know, he has been vindictive. He's super vindictive against a lot of things. New York State has a bunch of Ivy League and like highly recognized colleges and universities. And he's gone after all of those. And you know why? Because he couldn't get into any of those colleges. And his son couldn't get into Harvard. So, you know, this is just one of those weird, stupid things that he's done. And, you know, it's happening all across the country. There's certain state universities who he's trying to go after. And he's going after the big states, you know, big Democratic states. So New York and California, Illinois, he's trying to go after them. I'm not sure if he's going after Michigan, but he might be. But he just keeps saying that same stuff. And some people are believing it. And other people, they don't believe it because they don't like Jewish people. So, if they're saying now they do, they were saying all kind of bad stuff about Jewish people back in the day. So, no, not having it. It's just a lie. So, you can't, this is my opinion, you cannot just say, well, now that we've killed our DEI initiatives, we don't have to hire any minorities anymore. Which, that has happened. Unemployment for black people has grown drastically. And some people can't get good paying jobs, or they can't get a job all that much anymore. And, they're trying to find places to go. And at a certain point, we're probably going to have a lot more minorities in New York, and probably going to have a lot more minorities showing up in California and some of the other states. And there's going to be some folks who are going to have trouble who aren't black. I'll come back to that. Because here's my next thing. And I'm going in a slightly different direction, but this is something I see now. Because what I do for, my job is I deliver pharmaceuticals to people from a healthcare company. And I didn't see much of this last summer, but I'm seeing it this year. There's people who are standing on street corners begging for money. Now, I used to see that every once in a while, way back when. Heck, we can go back to the early 2010s, but not to the degree that it's at now. People are writing certain things on this piece of cardboard and they're waving at you. And I can't read it, even though I had, cataract surgery. My eyes are better, but I can't read it because you're writing something on, brown cardboard. You're probably using some kind of black thing. I can't read it, but I know what you want. And I haven't had anyone come up to the car yet, and I don't even look at them. Truth of the matter is, I don't carry cash. I don't carry cash almost anywhere, which means I haven't played the lotto in a while. But still, I don't have any cash. All I have is a credit card. So last week, I stopped at a place. I had to go up 21 steps to deliver pharmaceuticals. And, I'd get back in the car and this guy knocks on my window. And I didn't roll the window down. I said, dude, I don't have any cash. I said, I don't have any cash. I don't carry any cash. All I have is a credit card. And he says, well, can you come in to the store and buy me something I can eat? I'm like, what? No. I'm working. I got stuff to do. It might seem, mean to certain people, but no. And, there are some jobs. They might not be the best jobs, but there's, people who can get some of those, maybe they're lower paying jobs, but if you've got some kind of education and you're not stoned and you're not, drunk or anything like that, there are certain things that you can do. A lot of people who I deliver to are not living in some of the best conditions, but they're living in relatively nice. And I'm, relative nice. Now, I also deliver to some of those places, and it's weird because I have some of the folks who are living there who wish they could get out, but they are actually taking care of me and saying, you know what, if you're going to come in here, you need to put on a mask. You need to protect yourself. This is a dangerous place. And I thought that was kind. And I thank them for that. They said, no, you don't belong here. And we know this is your job and whatever, but, we need to make sure that someone's going to be coming in here delivering pharmaceuticals and they're going to be safe. And we need you to protect yourself. Thank you for that. But those folks are living in a place where I wish they could, find something that just goes up a little bit more than that. But, they live right in the city. And the city's got tons of places where some of these people can live. But the people who own those places ain't trying to clean. So, I wish there was something I could do about that one. But there's really not. But it's weird. It's weird. And the people who are asking for the money on the streets, by the way, they're not standing where they used to stand. I mean, if I'm driving and you're standing over there, even if I had money, how am I supposed to get money to you? There's just no way that can happen. I don't want you walking over here because once that light turns green, bruh's gone. that's just me. But, you know, if I had wealth of any kind, I would be one of those people trying to find a way to get all those folks a good meal. Or I would donate to, because there's a lot of places in the Syracuse area, and if it's in the Syracuse area, it's in all areas where there's large, cities of some kind. I would be finding a way to give those folks some food. Give them a place where they could at least clean up. Give them a, place where it's clean and they can sleep at night. That's all I can think of. But in general terms, that's just disappointing. And by the way, and this is a new thing, some of the women are actually soliciting during the day on some of these corners as prostitutes. They're not dressed like prostitutes. Yes, I know what prostitutes dress like. I've seen that in the past. I hadn't seen it in a long time. But some of them will sit there and pull their, shirts up, or their dresses, whatever it is they're wearing. It's just nothing you can do about that. I don't know. But here's leading into my next rant, which, why are you young people, men, mainly men, wearing pants that are lower than your behind? This is so strange. I mean, I see that all the time. And then one day, this young brother there, he's dressed okay, and, talking to him about something. And I said, by the way, can you explain to me, what is this thing about folks, young black men or other, I think some Hispanic people are wearing it also. I don't know that, and mainly see black people. But why are they doing that? Wearing the pants underneath their behind and whatever. It looks like they're going to fall off. And he says, well, because they know people who've been to jail, and a lot of those people get out of jail, and that's what they got used to while they were in jail. And so they think that's cool, and they dress like former convicts. And I said, well, who would want to dress like a former convict? He says, that's just what they do. They think it's cool. And I said to him, but if they do something that's illegal and the cops are chasing them down, do they think they can outrun any cop if the pants is down below, below their pants? And he says, well, some of them are able to wear belts that are tight enough, and some will go and they will buy the larger size belts, like, 50-inch waist or something like that, if they're, small enough. And they'll wrap it around twice, and then they'll find ways they can punch it in to try to keep those up some. I don't know. We didn't have that. I don't know when that actually came from. I don't remember seeing any movies. I just don't get it. A couple of weeks ago, I watched the movie New Jack City. If y'all ain't watched New Jack City, yeah, you're probably not black. But I'm watching New Jack City. There wasn't nobody in that movie wearing pants below their behinds. And Ice-T's in it. Go see that movie. Or rent it, or do something, whatever. But that's just something I don't understand. I don't want anybody looking at me thinking that, whoa, you must have just got out of jail because you're wearing something like that. And if I had a kid, no, no. And there are young people, I'll say basically 10 to 15 or 16, who are like that. And they're going to school like that. And I guess teachers aren't allowed to change them or, have a dress policy for children in certain areas. That's what I heard. I don't know how true it is. I don't have any kids. As a matter of fact, I don't work with anybody who has kids. So actually I do have one, but she only works one day a week. And she's Jewish. And I'm doubting, okay, she's also got some kind of money. Her husband has something, whatever. So, they're always leaving the country doing something. I don't know. Someone just help me on that. If you're looking to progress in some way, if you've got some kind of intellect, you want to look the part. You want to dress right when you go in there. That's all I'm saying. Now, this one here is aimed mainly at younger women. Doesn't matter who any of y'all are. But if y'all are wearing certain kind of clothes because you think that's in fashion, or maybe you saw it on a TV show or a movie, whatever, don't get mad if other people are looking at you when you're walking down the street like that, or if you're walking anywhere else. And this is not me beating up on you saying you shouldn't wear that stuff. You know, I don't care what you watch. Matter of fact, if I'm driving by and, you know, I'm not in a place where if I decide to look at something that I see out of the corner of my eye because, you know, there's cars coming at me or whatever, if I look, I look. And then I look, you know, I don't sit there and stare at it. That's not my thing. You know, I'm not looking for young girls. Not that young anyway. You know, legal. You know, I'm not going to lie. If there's a 25-year-old good-looking woman out there who says to me, Mitchell, we want to be with you. You know what? I'm not saying I'm turning that down if she's really good-looking or whatever. I'm going to do what I can. But it ain't going to happen. But I've heard some people say, what are you looking at? Why are you staring at me? Whatever. I'm thinking, you know, y'all, you know, you look good. That's why. If you don't want people looking at you when you look good, don't dress like that. Because I don't care. But don't get mad at other folks who might be doing it. And it's not just men, by the way. There are women who will say something to them and they yell at them for it. You know, if there's some older women, they've probably gone through a part of the thing that you're going through now. I'm remembering back in the mid-70s when hot pants came out. Who remembers hot pants? Okay, I'm the old guy here, but there were some folks who did that. Are you kidding? Heck, 14 years old, and there's a girl in my class who's wearing hot pants to school? I wasn't mad about that. And what's funny is that the kids who were wearing that stuff, we lived on a military base, which means either, well, probably all of their fathers were in the military. I don't know what to say about that, but that's just how that is. I don't know. My next rant, the curse words, cussing. Why is everybody cussing all the time these days? There's no need for that. If you got a bad vocabulary, buy a dictionary. Look up something in a thesaurus. Start using some regular words. But all that cussing, you know, if I hear it that much, I'm gone. I don't want to hear that. If it's in movies, I don't necessarily want to hear it all the time. But if it's a certain type of movie, like New Jack City, yes, they were using that kind of language because that was what the movie was about. Straight Outta Compton, yes, they used that kind of language because that's what it was all about. I saw the first Friday movie. That's what that language was all about. But in general terms, you know, folks are just doing that because they just want to do it. And they're doing it in front of kids, and they're doing it in front of, you know, older people. I'm not saying me because, truthfully, I don't really care. But I hate the disrespect that they're giving to, you know, people who might be the same age as their mother. If you're using that language in front of your mother and your mother's using it back at you, I can't say a word. It's just nothing I've got. But it doesn't hurt to be a bit more courteous towards other people. You know what happens here? Almost nobody says a lot of that kind of language when I'm delivering a pharmaceutical. I don't know. Maybe it's because I dress differently. You know, bro's working. I'm not wearing, okay, I am sometimes wearing my Snoopy shirts and a couple of Star Trek shirts, and I got my one Harry Potter shirt, but they're clean. Everything is clean. And I also wear another jacket over it always, even when the weather is hot, which it is right now, because for whatever reason, when the sun is out, it doesn't go through the jacket I'm wearing. So I stay at least a little bit cooler. But all the cussing, all the bad language, whatever, I don't want to hear all that. Like I said, I've never said a bad word in my entire life. So, you know, isn't there a way that we can be courteous towards others without all of that? Now, if someone slapped you around or someone tripped you or someone bumped you, you know, without, you know, apologizing for it, or some other things that have irked you, okay, you get a break with that one. It's just like athletes in today's world. They used to not be allowed to say all that stuff during professional basketball games, professional football. Well, football was different because not everyone could hear it. But basketball, yes. Baseball, even though I've never been to a professional game. Actually, I did go to one professional game and it rained, so they canceled it. So I never got to see that. But, I just think that is discourteous. Now, if you don't care, okay, fine and dandy, but this is my rant. So, let's talk about the Orange Dictator and the voters. Back in November or early December, and I mentioned this earlier, and I said I'd come back to it, and this is me coming back to it now. A lot of y'all are really mad about stuff right now. You deserve to be mad, but it's your fault because you voted for him. Because he told y'all a whole bunch of lies up front. Didn't you hear all that mess when he was president the first time? And this time, he came in and he said a few things. Yes, he says, I'm going to go after people who treated me wrong, in my opinion. If that's the person you think you should be going to vote for as president, y'all got a problem. It's intolerable. But you've got that. And he says, if you made me mad, you get what you deserve. And, he said he was going to do that. He also said that we're going to go after all these illegal aliens. All these illegal aliens. And some of y'all voted for him. And you know what's going on with that? You know what's going on with that. We got ICE, the immigration thing or whatever. And you've got different National Guards. And you got all these folks who are going out there and they're doing stuff to these people, whether they know, I'll put it that way, whether they know they're illegal or not. Some of those people have been in this country 30 to 40 years. They've got permission to be in this country. They've got paperwork saying, hey, I deserve to be. They don't care. And they're taking all these people. And you know who's suffering the most? Farmers. Because they don't have anybody who can pick the crops. They don't have that anymore. Florida is in deep trouble because they have a housing shortage now. Why? Because most of the people who were helping to build houses were immigrants. And DeSantis, we're going to fix woke. We're not having any of that in here. He killed that. And suddenly a lot of housing people in Florida who own that stuff, we can't build any homes. There's just nobody here. Because you can't pay somebody who isn't from another country $15 an hour to be out in this hot sun for 10 to 12 hours. They're not going to do it. And Florida's hot. So you've got that all over the country. And people are not saying, oh, I didn't know this was going to happen to us. I mean, some of those people have had to foreclose. Some of those people are trying to sell, their property, and they're getting low dollars for it. That's your fault. He said he was going to do it, and he did it. And the tax initiatives, the tariffs, whatever. Folks, I didn't know he was going to come with the tariffs. I didn't know that was coming. I knew some of it, all the other stuff was coming, but the tariffs thing, it's like, why is he doing that and whatever? And he went after a bunch of folks. And the ones that he went after, which were the stupidest things, was Canada and Mexico. The folks we're attached to. Now, there was all this lying, and I knew it was lying, the first time he was president, and then during the Biden administration, saying there's all these illegals who are coming across the borders and they're selling all this fentanyl and all this other kind of stuff. They said last year when Biden was still president, and they were, trying to do a study. It said, okay, about how many illegal aliens are coming across the border with fentanyl trying to sell. And it was probably less than 100 people in the entire year. I'm sorry, 100 migrant people. Because the people who they were arresting the most were white people. Hold on. I didn't know that was going to go on. Anyway, it was many white people. And they were coming in through all these other countries. Some of them were flying it in, which I didn't even know you could get away with that. I've never tried to trick anybody into me trying to get something, across the country. But somehow they did it. And these folks were all over the place. So you went after the wrong people. It was prejudice. It was racist. And you're incorrect on that. But you went after Canada, and you're going to hit them with a 100% tariff on a whole bunch of stuff. And Canada said, all right, we're going to go and we're going to talk to the European Union. And, oh, by the way, we're going to shut down, probably within the year, we're going to shut down some of the roads so that you can't go through Canada to get to Alaska. And they can't get to the regular, 48 if they're in Alaska. Canada's got them in a good spot. Canada has y'all in a good spot. Now, I'm a little irked because I had planned on going to Niagara Falls this summer, and I was going to go across the bridge into the Canadian side of Niagara Falls. And I've been there before, but I haven't been on the Canadian side in a bunch of years. But I was planning on going there, or I thought, maybe I'll go up to Alexandria Bay, pretty close to it. There is a bridge where you can get close to Montreal. That ain't happening. That's not going to happen. And I'm a little irked by that because I thought it would be my first trip in, goodness, 5 or 6 years? Gone. Because you irked them. And you irked Mexico for the exact same thing. Because they say, we can do all this stuff with everybody else. And they have. And the European countries, they don't care. And all that stuff you were saying about China, dude, 1.3 billion people in China. China doesn't need your money. China can get their stuff to everybody else. And now the orange mess is talking about, well, we're probably going to change some of those things. They don't need you. They just don't need you. So that's just a mess. And the last thing, and this is, I was still talking about, the orange poopy pants guy, is the fact that he lies all the time and everything's a total mess. I was shocked when I found out, was it Saturday night or maybe it was, very early, Saturday morning, whatever, when the news alert came through saying that he sent a plane to hit, to target Iran with 3 missiles, saying it was in nuclear sites. It's like, what? You sent a plane to shoot at nuclear sites? Are you out of your mind? Are you insane? Now, I have not heard, I have not seen the news. I don't know how bad it was, but luckily, I guess there hasn't been any major explosions. We didn't get any, nuclear stuff, whatever. But, this is not the same Iran that we had to deal with back in the 70s or 80s, 2000s. Not the same place. And that's just a mess. And he lied saying, well, I'm going to get Putin not to do this thing and whatever. Yeah, he can't tell Putin what to do. He doesn't have the kind of power Putin has. So, it's just a mess. The lies and everything else. He spent something like, let's see, was it almost $500 million or something, whatever, to try to put on a parade because he wants to be like other countries. But that's not what the United States is for. And so they had maybe 40,000 people who showed up in Washington, D.C. to see that. But across the country, 500 to 750 million people protested on the same day. No kings protest. And he doesn't like that people are saying that about him. But, it's the same guy who said in some interview before the election that he was going to be dictator on day one. He says just one day, but then, I'm going to be dictator for one day. He's still a dictator. He doesn't like it. And now some of the Republican folks in the Senate and in the House are going against him. I mean, it's so bad for those politicians that the leaders of their parties in Washington, D.C. have said, we recommend that you don't do any open meetings in your state. They're probably not going to take it well. If you know that things are so bad that the constituents of your state aren't going to like it, and you tell the people who are supposed to be trying to help the country be better that they shouldn't talk to any of the constituents, you're doing wrong. And Mike Johnson, I have a feeling that by the end of this year, homeboy might not be the House Speaker anymore. He's going to have a McCarthy thing. Kevin McCarthy from California, when they, voted him out. And if that happens, they ain't getting nobody else in, because from now on, the Democrats are not going to say, okay, we will vote with you, because they saw that he lied. Man, I mean, this is just where the country is, and that's a mess. And the folks who brought this mess on, I hope y'all all suffer. Hope your kids don't suffer, but I hope all of you suffer. If you're rich and you did some stuff, I hope all of y'all suffer too. Yeah, I said it. Anyway, that's my rant. And I took certain things. Like I said, it's going to have the timestamps down below. I don't know if anyone's going to go that far with it, but it's a long video. I hope a few people see it and someone has something to say. I'd like to know other people's opinions. My name is Mitch. Catch y'all on the other side.